Hello and welcome to Groovecast, the podcast for the rhythm section with me, Ashley Walker.
And me, Charlie Smith.
And it's been a while, hasn't it, since we've last recorded? It's
Yeah,
been a couple of
it's
months, hasn't it?
couple of months. A few gigs have passed between then and now. Um, but yeah, with one thing and another, it's been a bit of time.
Yeah, and you've obviously had the wonderful interview with the brilliant Neil Wilkinson to enjoy over the last couple of months. Some great little nuggets in there, wasn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was I think we always say it, but some of those interviews are the best. So as much as we like talking to each other, it's great when there's someone else there to do the talking, and we can just sit back and listen a bit and take it all in because that's definitely you know I mean, Neil was one I'd been wanting to get him on for a while, and it took us a little bit of time to finally line up some dates and make it happen, but I'm really glad we did. And thanks again to Neil for being such a an easy person to have on, and just you know telling some good stories, dipping through his record collection, and bringing some good nuggets of industry chat to our porky little podcast.
Yeah, it was yes, we've had some lovely feedback from people over it, and whether it was just a bit of advice that he shared or a story from his career. Um yeah, I loved hearing about his how he ended up on the James Morrison gig, which you can obviously listen to. Go and listen to that episode, or go and have a look at the little clips that we're putting on still. Or they'll
Yeah,
probably be out by now.
yeah. There's a few clips going up on the socials, so yeah, go and check them out. Because for once we're actually recording this episode very close to when we put it out, which is un unknown territory for us. So yeah, for once we are up to date as of this week.
Yeah. Um, yeah, it's kind of an interesting one because yeah, with those conversations with Neil, one of the clips we put out was to do with what he gets provided on certain sessions, and so I thought that would be and the prep he puts into gigs, and whether it's his sound or a style. So we kind of thought that would be an interesting thing to talk about, our own process, and also working as Neil's done for a lot of his career, working with original artists, as we've both sort of done, and myself a little bit more recently. And what that can be like working for an original artist rather than a cover band or a tribute or that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's definitely a different thing. I mean, I suppose I can kind of kick this off of the gig that's been that for me the most has been the Dainties thing. But as
Mm.
far as gig prep for that, initially when I took that gig, there was probably 20 or 30 songs that I say the word learned. I became familiar with what was going on because just the way Martin works, very different to most original artists, is that he's not set in these ways of playing something. There's certain songs you'll play the same every single night. There's certain
Mm.
songs that could be changed in the arrangement or the ways of the vibe of it, the feel, and you can it's even still you can play the same tune 3 nights running on a little tour or whatever, or on a run of gigs, and it will be totally different. It might have a different ending. It might have a different solo section that he puts in. Depending on who's on, who's in the band. Is it one guitar, one electric guitar, two electric guitars? Is the harmonica? You know, and also just the vibe of how he's feeling. Some gigs he'll be very going for the picking the more up tempo. I say aggressive, but sort of more full on numbers. And some gigs you know, he'll be picking the more ballady things, or the lighter stuff, the jazzier stuff. So you kind of, yeah, it got to a point about, well, I never read charts on the gig ever. That was a non-issue. I never even bothered writing charts because there was no point, because I knew they would just be useless. And the other thing that that gig doesn't even have is a set list. There is,
Mm.
we go on stage, we don't know what the first number is most of the time. We walked onto a festival gig last week, and as we were walking on, we said, "What's the first number?" And Martin just went, "I haven't decided yet." So it was totally up to that, and you get better at guessing where things are going if he's telling a certain anecdote, and it's going to lead to a certain tune, or not sometimes. Um, but sometimes you've got to just jump and guess things. You've got to take a leap and guess that you're going to do that particular ending, or the little coda on the end, or this figure or that figure. Um, so as for gig prep now, I do absolutely none. And I haven't for the past 2.5 years, because you just can't. The worst thing for me to do is to sit and listen back to the original recordings, because they're so different to how things are going now. But also, I'd rather it just be very sporadic, and it's quite kind of nice to sit on stage not knowing what's going to happen next, because it really puts you on your guard. You've really got to be, eyes up, seeing what's going on, keeping tabs on what the other players are doing, and that's sort of become the fun of that gig, is just the unpredictability.
Have you ever clicked a song in and it been the wrong one that he wanted, or?
Oh, that's the other thing. There's only one song I actually bring in. All the rest, he starts, because 9 times out of 10 he started a song before we know what it is.
Yeah.
So Martin sets all the tempos. I might pull a tempo a little bit if I feel like it's a little bit, if he's got a bit excited, or if it's like feels like it's dragging a little bit. But for the most part, he'll set the tempos. There's a couple of tunes that might be a guitar riff start, that Gary would play if he's on, or Rupert if he's on guitar. There is one tune which is Holy Humble Heart, which sometimes Martin will start it with guitar. Sometimes he'll want what he calls the Sly and Robbie version, which is where me and Anth or Adrian, whoever's on bass, we kick it in, and that song kicks off. The way I always play it is a live version they did on a TV show back in 80 whatever it was, mid 80s, which my granddad was on. So I always kind of honour that little drum fill that he put in there, just as a little tip of the hat. But also it's one of those fills where I don't have to think about the tempo too much. I know that when I play that fill, it's the tempo. So and it sort of, yeah. So you end up, that's the only one I'm really ever responsible for. All the rest are either chugging guitar start or a guitar riff that we latch onto. So there's no shouting 1, 2, 3, 4 or clicking anything in for me to worry about too much, which is quite nice.
Well, it's an interesting thing, because the my experience with the original artist thing most recently was at the Blackpool Winter Gardens for the Northern Soul weekend there with Snake Davis's band, The Suspicions, and playing for artists. And it's similar to what you're saying there of no dots provided kind of thing. Although fortunately, because I was depping, I did have some lead sheets and that kind of thing. But it's a totally different pressure to going into something like a big band, or a band that I know we talked about with Steve Pierce, that thing of having to sort of go and sweat, or go and just go and sort of really work your socks off reading something. Is a totally different pressure going in kind of blind almost, or semi-blind, and you're finding the song, or finding the feel there in the moment. And then that can all obviously go out the window when the artist turns up later that afternoon or the next day, which is something that we experienced a little bit, working out maybe an ending, because on the record it was a fade out, and then they'll come in and say, oh no, this is the live version that we do, or that's another challenge.
Yeah, it's a different thing. Just and some of these artists, especially in the pop thing now, it's all click tracks anyway, so it would be all clicked, and even if there was no dots, you'd be sent the tracks and you'd know what was going on, and you could sketch yourself a, there's a intro and a verse and a chorus and whatever else. But for the sort of the what I would call the heritage acts, which is what we're sort of talking about here, the people who've had the hit back in the day, or a few years ago, not very not current
Yeah.
artists, but those who've it's still successful, but very much had their success at a time, and then they're still doing stuff sort of off the back of that is why people would know of them. So yeah, why don't you run us down who you worked with and some of the stuff you played?
Well, the main artists that we worked with were a singer PP Arnold, who had that the hit with First Cut as the Deepest, among other songs. She came and did 3 songs with us, which was brilliant, and she was awesome. We worked with a singer called Betty Lavette, who I think recently or maybe last year was part of a tribute concert to Paul McCartney, which is kind of where I knew her from, to be honest. But we did a full set with her, so that was a full day. And then we did one song with a singer called Connie Laverne, who had a hit song in the 70s, 74, I think. And with as me and you were discussing this before we started recording, with a lot of these sort of Northern Soul singers, they recorded songs in the 60s or the 70s, and if what didn't become a hit, or maybe it wasn't played in America, and so that they'd go on with their lives for the next 40, 50 years, a lot of them just doing normal jobs. One singer I know from a couple of years ago that they worked with ended up being a school teacher for about 40 years, and then found out, as with Connie, that people in Britain had been playing these records for 60 years, and it was a cult thing in Blackpool and in Wigan and those places. So I think the lovely thing with someone like Connie was that she'd probably sung this song a handful of times since she recorded it 50 years ago, and she came in and was brilliant. It was a great song, and with it being a 70s song, it was more towards the disco side than the Motown. And whereas, as we know, with some of those Northern Soul 60s songs, they can be very interesting and different feet. But it was some things you almost know, or a bass riff that you almost know where it's going to go, but then it goes completely the other way.
Yeah. And yeah, what was the sort of? I'm interested in this. What was the rehearsal process like? Was it doing a lot with the band and then the singer comes in later, or was it rehearsing with the singer, or not much rehearsal at all, and just you sort of having a quick top and tail, and then doing it?
Well, it was, yeah, as you say, it was the prep for it was like you were describing there. I think the singers all got sent the tracks, band got sent all the tracks, and then sketched their own dots out. Uh, um, Coming to the rehearsal, we had a full day of just the band with Snake doing everything, all of his stuff, because they did a set with just their band, all of Betty Lavette's set, the PP Arnold, Connie, and then went through again and top and tailed everything and reworked certain things. And then the second day was with, I think, Betty and PP Arnold. So we got to play. And the interesting thing with that, with Bessie Lavette, who we had quite a few hours with, these people are like obviously in their late 70s now, and obviously need to save their voice. They've come over from America. I think with 2 of them, they'd come over just for this, so a bit jet lagged, and need to be careful, protect themselves. It was literally one time through, and and then that was it. No clarifying or anything. And she did not want to do a song more than once. So there was a big change the way she does things live. With tempos is different. With her band, obviously, they might play stuff certainly different or add fills and that she might be used to hearing. And one of the things that I know you've experienced this as well, and was an interesting thing we wanted to talk about, is sort of when you have to sort of manage the artist, working with an artist who doesn't really know about the musical side of it, as in chords, and they're trying to explain something, and you kind of, the MD in that instance is the bridge between, and the translator, if you like, between the artist asking for something and the band actually providing it. whether it's an ending or a row or that kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I've sort of done the other end of this, which is working with someone at the last minute,
Mm.
of it being having some notice of what was going on, but no rehearsals or very minimal rehearsals, and that sort of flies back to what I did a couple of years ago with Tom Robinson, where he came and did a guest spot just for 3 songs during one of the Dainties gigs in London at the 229 Club in, I think it's near Regent's Park. And so Tom was coming in, and we knew what the 3 songs he was going to do were, but that day it was I think it was November or December, so it was absolutely pelting down with snow. So we got to London later than we wanted to. I think we got in at 6 o'clock for what would have been a 5:30 sound check. So we were sort
Mm.
of behind anyway, just because of travel situations and roads shut and all that manner of stuff. So it was like get into the gig, set the gear up, do a sound check. Martin hadn't even made it because his flight had been delayed. So I think he was racing across London himself while we had a sound check without him. So we went on stage totally without having played with Martin, which, to be honest, that's fine. We've all done that gig enough. But Tom was there, but because of the timings, they wanted to get the doors open, because obviously people don't want to be stood out in the freezing cold in December waiting while,
Yeah.
hang on, we're just having to hold the doors 10 minutes while the band want to rehearse. So we had one run through, I think, of 2468 Motorway with Tom on stage, and we might have had a little look at War Baby, and we might have had a little look at Glad to Be Gay. I can't remember, because they were the 3 songs. But 2468 is probably the best known of the 3. It's certainly the one I knew best, and so I'd sketched some charts out for all of this, and we had a little run through, and then Tom was sort of, he was one of those who he knew what he wanted, and I was kind of glad of that. He wasn't one of those who was just like, oh, just whatever. So
Mm.
he was trying to go through, he was going through some of the bits with guitar and bass just to make sure they were on the thing, and Tom was playing acoustic guitar as well, which was, I wasn't sure what he was going to do, whether he would play acoustic or, because he's a bass player, or he was originally a bass player in his band. He was bass and lead vocal, so I wasn't sure if he was going to play a bass, but he played acoustic guitar, and that was cool. So yeah, so he ran through a few of the harmonies really briefly, and yeah, and then he just, with me, he wanted it a certain tempo, which was fine. I think I'd sketched out the tempo of the original and metronome marked that, just so I could set my little metronome off at the side of me, just to give me a guide for bringing it in.
Mm.
And then it sort of settles itself from there. And he said, oh, can we have it just a little bit up? And I said, sure, so I just notched it up a little bit. It wasn't much, because I mean, it's quite a laid back song anyway. And then it was just, I'd written out virtually, a version of what was going on the original. And he was clear about what he wanted. He wanted 16th note hi-hats. That was fine all the way through. But what he wanted it to be really busy.
Yeah.
Which the original actually isn't too busy. There's some drum fills and stuff around it, but he wanted it really busy. I mean, we're doing this. We were only a 4-piece band. It was, electric guitar, bass, drums, and then Tom with vocal and acoustic. So it was really stripped back band anyway. But we did, and he just said, you've got to play busy. And so on my chart, which is actually hung on the wall over there somewhere, and I'll probably put a picture of it up on the socials when this episode goes out. Tom inscribed it himself backstage, and he just said, it is impossible to overplay on 2468 Motorway, Tom. So that was really cool. So that chart went straight in a frame when it got home. I thought that's a bit special, and yeah, doing it on the gig was great. It all went pretty much to plan. the end was slightly different because I'd sussed out the end that Tom had been doing live and tried, as you do, you communicate it to the rest of the band. But by the
Mhm.
time it got to the end of the tune, they'd all forgotten what was going on. So it was one of those you just had to sort of make it as best as you can. So that, it might have been a little bit more scraggly than I'd have liked, but for the most part, that was really good. And the other two tunes were really nice. I think we had a guest sax player on one of them. I can't remember which one it was. Who came up and did a little spot. Who's a friend of the band, so that was kind of cool. And yeah, and Tom was really easy. He came in, he knew what he wanted. So I mean, this is the thing of being a musician. You've got to be able to read when someone's either angry with you or just telling you what they want. They're not trying to, put you down. It's just this is how they like it, and this is how they've told all the musicians who've ever come before you to play what they
Yeah,
want. So, you could read Tom maybe if you'd have saw it in the wrong way as being a bit short and a bit, but actually he wasn't. He was just, he's a musician and he knows what he likes and he's putting it across. And certainly didn't come across that way to me, but some people would see that and go, oh, they're really, decisive of they want things a certain way, and yeah, they do. It's their music. That's
yeah,
that's what we're there to serve. We're there to serve what they want. And Tom was actually great. I think it's because he's a bass player and because he was even saying the Tom Robinson band as it was back in the day was he designed it so that it could be anyone. He could go into the jam nights or into the pubs, and play with any band and be able to just tell them his song in 10 seconds. Here's the
mm,
riff, quickly show the guitarist. This is what it does. That's the groove. Bass. I'll play the bass and I'll sing. That was how he wrote all the songs. They were a lot of them. The early Tom Robinson stuff was designed to be like played by a scratch band on the fly, which I thought was kind of
mm.
cool.
Yeah, I think that's the benefit of working with an artist who is also a musician. It kind of bridges that gap itself, and I've always found it, just myself, well, with you personally, and with working with other drummers, when artists are giving them direction, drummers seem to take it probably better than maybe some other members of the band would. I don't know, maybe controversial, but I know what you were saying there about the artist, making sure you don't take things the wrong way, and that's one of the and one of the kind of parts of being a musician is, um, you know, when if it's not the pressure of a reading thing, it's the pressure of making sure you take things the right way and the artist's happy. And I know working with the three singers the other day, it can be, they're all American and they've got sometimes their whatever their manager there or whoever, or their personal sort of people with them, and they could have a tone that, the Americans' way of saying things that you think's a bit forward or a bit, but it's actually not at all. They're just, as you say, you're serving the music, and with the people that we worked with, that some of them haven't either done these songs at all, or certain ones they haven't done in 60 years, and they might be nervous, they might be wondering if the band are going to be any good, are they going to absolutely crucify me here, but generally I think it's a pretty appreciative, they're pretty appreciative, and I know we'll have to put up our pictures, your picture of you, Tom Robinson, on Insta after this, and maybe I'll put on the picture with PP Arnold, and we'll do a little post of that to.
Yeah, it's you've got to always remember it's a two-way deal. They're relying on you to make their gig happen, and you're relying on them to make your gig happen. They've got to be on their ball and doing their bit for you to be able to do yours as best you can, and you're there to serve the song. You're not there to be yourself or do what you want to do. You know, you can add little bits of your own thing in sometimes, but fundamentally you're there to play their music so that them and their audience are happy with it.
Yeah, it's you we know we wouldn't have a gig if they weren't there singing those songs, and likewise they wouldn't be able to do it without the band. So it definitely is. And you have to make sure you do your prep and your and sometimes that as we both probably experienced, sometimes you get the odd artist that isn't the friendliest, or maybe isn't as appreciative, and they don't know about the work that you've done, in our case the day before, all day, to make it sound how it is. But we got out of it, we got through it this
Yeah.
weekend.
Well, that's it. Sometimes that they exist in their little bubbles, and that's not just original artists. That can be anyone, whether it's singers, actors. When you're working with them, it's because they've got their own itinerary of stuff they've got to manage and stuff they've got to think about. So what you're doing generally doesn't really come into it anyway, and it's always nice to be appreciated and stuff, but at the end of the day, you're doing your gig, you've got your bits to worry about, they're doing their gig, they've got their bits to worry about. And so you kind of have that mutual thing of working together but not getting in each other's ways.
Yeah, one of the things, if it's not too off topic, but talking to you this weekend was, I got to play at a cool venue, and I wondered if we wanted to compare notes on that venue in Barnold.
Yeah, well, it's actually, I think it's pronounced Barwick.
Yeah, I know that. I think they also call it Barney, don't they? Or they have like a nickname for it.
I don't know. Yeah, because I'm sure I said Barnoldswick and got very much corrected that it's Barwick. I think that's what it is. Don't quote me on that though. But
Have
yeah,
people writing.
yeah, answers on a postcard. Uh, but yeah, I mean, I played in that music and arts centre. Oh, it must be over a year ago. It was a Dainties thing we did in there, but it was quite a while ago. So obviously, it's probably a lot more fresh in your memory than it was in mine. But
It must have been busy on stage. It's not very. How many of you are in the Dainties band?
we did it as a 4-piece. So I was tucked in the little alcove. There's a picture of me somewhere in that little alcove setting the gear up or packing it down. I can't remember which. So I was sort of in the back, and then we had guitar one side, bass the other, Martin in front. So it was only 4 of us, but it is a tight venue. It's quite a compact setup. I don't know how many you were there with. But it's like I think it can only hold about 75 people.
Yeah, I think, yeah, a push probably.
Yeah.
It's a lovely venue though, and I said, I mean, this place we'll put some pictures on with when we release this video or something, because to give it, and it still won't give a good kind of a accurate idea of it, but it's kind of Ronnie Scott's meets, like a bit more of a pub vibe with a music shop above it one side, and the Irish bar. But it's just, I said if it was my local pub, I think I'd be in there every day.
Yeah, I do remember that there was really good. They did really good food for the band. I
Yeah,
think I'm 99% sure if it because it's like you remember the venue but you can't remember the band room. But I'm sure it
yeah.
was. I'm sure we got really well looked after. Got really well fed. I think it was tapas or something. I can't quite remember, but it was
We just got
very nice.
sandwiches. The sandwiches were good. We
Oh
didn't get
well,
any
that's
tapa.
that's all right. I can't, as I say, I can't remember. It was that long ago. I could be thinking of somewhere different, but it was. We and that's always good for a venue as well, where you get a nice band room and just somewhere to chill out and keep away from the rat race for a little while before you actually get on and do it. But
Yeah,
but yeah, it's a really interesting little place. It's got like it's a basement really with like
yeah,
and it's stone floor. Uh, and as you say, it's sort of I think it's got like theatre style old cinema seats around the little stage area on 2 sides, like benches to one side, and then the cinema seats straight in front, and then the whole other part of it where the bar is all standing, and it's just full
mm,
of amps and guitars and memorabilia and photographs. It's It's quite the place.
Yeah, definitely. I'll definitely be going back there, even if it's not in a working capacity. But it's one of those venues. I was told before we went there. Was talking to one of the singers from Blackpool who works with the band Sad Cafe. She said she'd played there with Sad Cafe, and I don't know if there's like 7 of them in the band. He said, you're playing, and the audience are like there where my mic is, and it said, it'll be a shock, but it'll be a lovely one. And it was one of those those venues, small as it may be, completely chalk and cheese to the Winter Gardens in the ballroom there. But it was just one of those great gigs where, as I'm sure you have with the Dainties, where people are there and they're hanging on every word Snake says and every note he plays. And, we did a few sort of solos and a couple of bass solos, and people applaud you after you do a solo, people actually listening.
Yeah, sometimes those tidy venues and the more intimate gigs can actually be the better ones. You can do a gig in a big theatre or like the Winter Gardens or wherever, and it not have as much of a vibe about it, or as much of a an exclusivity and a bit of something about it. And that's what I think some of those little venues have, and each one is so different that they have their own little USP that just makes them different to the last place you played or different to the place you played before that. And yeah, that's what I like about some of them. It's just they're really individual. They're not trying to be, they're just wanting to be the best small venue that they can be, and that's always really nice. But yeah, some of those, yeah, you do prefer the sweaty, tight atmosphere of someone can practically reach over and put their hands on your guitar, and you're really close and trying to, and in there, I think, especially with the bass, you'll have to watch how you're spinning around because you could take
Yeah, yeah.
someone's eye out.
Well, yeah, we only did it as a 3-piece for most of it, and then for a couple of tunes, my dad came on and played trumpet. So then, when the 4 of us were there, I had to move over I had to come forward because, as you said, where there's the pub side, there's kind of a bit of a wall, so you have to stand forward if you want people to be able to see you. So I was kind of at a bit of an angle with my back to the wall, um, backs to the wall, literally backs to the wall.
It is.
Maybe that's where that expression comes from.
Who knows?
Um,
I mean, it reminds me a little bit of seeing Gad at Ronnie's years ago, when he had Jimmy Johnson on bass, and Jimmy Johnson just leant against the back wall at Ronnie's, next tucked right into Gad, and he had enough room. He could have not done that, but you could just see how into the groove he was by just being super close to the, he could have, from his plucking fingers, he could have pretty much reached out and tapped the hi hat. He was that tight into it.
Brilliant.
But yeah, I mean, it. Yeah, those small venues just they all have their own little thing about them. Some are great, some are more of a challenge. But yeah, the music and art centres are one of the best ones.
Yeah, that's a lovely note, lovely plug for them, and a lovely note to probably kind of finish this episode on. We've had a good chat, a good
Yeah,
catch up.
it's been a while. We'll have to
It's
do
been
it
a
up.
while.
We'll have to see what we can chat about in the next episode, because I think there's only one more of this season, and then
One more.
I know, and then we've got to plan a whole next season, so that'll be fun.
Exciting times.
Yeah, very. So if you haven't already, go and subscribe to the podcast, and you can also follow us on Facebook or on Instagram at groovecastuk. And if you're watching this on YouTube, hello. And you can look down in the description to find links and information and all that good stuff.
Yeah, well, we hope you've enjoyed this episode, and we'll see you next time for the last episode of season 3.
Bye.